Hello Techies, welcome back to our channel UiPath by Sujitha. In this video, we are going to learn about selectors. Why selectors plays a prominent role in UI automation. How to get most reliable selectors. How to fine tune the selectors in order to find most reliable selectors which can work in all kind of environments. Right? Now let us see. Before that, we have already covered few videos in our selectors, introduction to selectors and all. So please go through that video as well, so you will get to know about selectors in detail. Now let us see selectors fine tuning. Fine tuning means we are tuning the current selectors in order to make the workflow to work more efficiently, so that it will find the UI element in all the environments, irrespective of the environments or irrespective of the application changes. Right? What is selector? We already learned about this, right? Selectors are nothing but the XML fragment which will provide the path to the executor in order to find the UI, specific UI element in any application, whether it is a web or desktop application, right? So when this is generated, automatically generated, when we indicate the specific UI element using recorder or using activity, right? So during this process, when there is any change in the element position in the application, or when there is any change in the application version, or when there is a change in the environment where we are running this application, definitely there will be an impact on the UI element position or UI element attribute values of the attributes. In such scenarios, since selectors contains the tags and attributes or the values of the attributes in its XML fragment as the path to identify UI element, this will be going to impact the selectors. So whatever we have stored in our workflow may not work that much efficiently in order to recognize the UI element when there is any change. So in such scenarios, we are supposed to go back to our code again and we need to fix that issue, right? We need to re-indicate the element in order to fix the selector. How many times we can do the same kind of process? That is not the best approach, right? Whenever we are moving code from development environment to test environment or to production environment, again and again fixing each and every selector, because there will be multiple UI elements we will be playing around in the application, considering if you consider any moderate to complex project. So that may not be the ideal methodology, right? So that is not acceptable. So whenever there is a version change, again we need to go back and we need to fix all the selectors in the project. That is not at all acceptable, right? Then how to avoid this situation? There is something called fine-tuning selectors. This contains different methods, different approaches in order to avoid this situation. Let us see in detail with best demo use cases in our videos. Now let me note it down whatever we have heard so far. Fine tuning selectors. When we need fine tuning selectors? When the selectors are not reliable or too specific towards the application change, right? Or too specific, or we can say too sensitive towards the application change, right? In this is one situation. Also, when there is any version change, right? Version change in the sense application version change. Got it? I can say that it is system changes. When there is system changes, it will directly impact the selectors, because few elements contains the version of the application too, right? Or the elements contains another element which may change according to the application. In such scenarios also, fine tuning is very much needed, right? And one more thing is dynamic selectors. Dynamically the selector path might be changing, because in few websites, if you observe, the elements position will keep on changing. There won't be any constant position of the elements. Say for example, our rpachallenge.com, all the fields will get changed whenever we refresh the website, right? So in such scenarios also, to make sure that our coding, our automation project or workflow file works fit for the for all the kinds of positions with respect to the application changes, the position changes. In such scenarios, we need fine tuning the selectors. So we could say that dynamically changing selectors. This is very important concept. We'll talk about this. Okay. And one more thing is there, that is when selectors use index value. Selectors using IDX, I can say IDX, that is nothing but index value of the element. Say for example, in a container, say in a piece of in any application, when you are filling any form related to insurance, say for example, all the personal details will be in one container, like container in the sense a block of web page, right? It might be in different color, and second block contains your the vehicle details. So now when there is multiple fields in particular, say personal field, we may be addressing our full name, first name, last name, or address, or country, all these details, phone number and all. So all these fields are directed or related or tagged to a container, where there might be an index value needed in order to in order to specify that UI element, say UI field, right? In such scenarios, whenever I made a change, like whenever I add one more field into that piece of block in web page, that will directly impact your index value. Say for example, for first name field is having 11 as the index value. When I add one more field, say phone number, in the application, this 11 is going to be changed to some 12, right? Because I have added the phone number at the top, right? So it is directly impacting the index value of other elements in the same container. In such scenario, if we move our selector, whatever we have selected during our testing and development phase, to production, it may not work. By the time you move your code to production, the application fields got changed, right? So it may not work. So to avoid this situation, again we need to fine tune the selectors. Now let us see in detail how best we can fine tune, what are the methodologies we can use, what are the best approaches to fine tune the selectors. Now we are clear about these scenarios, right? When there is system changes and when dynamically changing selectors are available, then when the selectors using IDX values, that is nothing but index values, Also, when the selectors are not reliable, too specific or too sensitive towards the application change. In these scenarios, we are going to fine tune the selectors. Okay. Now let us see the best approaches to fine tune selectors. What are the best approaches to fine tune the selectors? Number one, there are three different or three unique approaches to fine tune the selectors in order to avoid these situations. Let us know one by one in detail. Number one, first approach is using wildcards. Wildcards. In many programs we could see, right, wildcard entry, right, all of a sudden gets entered, right? So this is nothing but the same, wildcards. What are wildcards? So wildcards are nothing but symbols which we use. Let me note it down. Symbols which we use to, what to say, in dynamically changing selectors. In order to fix these dynamically changing selectors, we are going to use some symbols which can fix this issue. Okay, so instead of what to say, the value that is going to be changed in the selector, we will replace those values, the dynamically changing value, with some symbols. So we can say symbols that replace zero or more characters in a string. Okay, in selectors. Okay, so say for example an attribute value is something like 10203. Okay, it is keep on changing. Say for example, I could say that AA name, this is one attribute whose value is I can say that SEL30. Okay, and this 30 value is keep on changing for each element. Sometimes it is 23 and sometimes it is 45 and sometimes it is 49, right? In such scenarios, what we are going to do is we are going to replace this characters in the string, these two characters, with some wildcard symbol. How to do that? I'll be giving, because I observed that this SEL is common, now I'm going to use asterisk symbol, right? So we have only two symbols which we use for wildcards. Those are, one is asterisk to replace 0 or more characters, and one more is question mark symbol which replaces a single character. Say for example, this is one example for asterisk. Let me keep it here. Okay, and let us see one more example for question mark. Okay, say we have AA name equals to what to say, that select, I can say that one select. Okay, and this one is going to be changing every time. So in that scenario I can use this one, because I'm sure that we have only one character is getting changed every time in the value. So in such scenario we can go for question mark symbol. So in this question mark place there could be any value but only one single character. In this asterisk there could be any value, whether it is 0 or more characters. It is not only for 2 characters, it could be any value. Say for example, it could be SEL, CET, 49, so and so, any value, right? Got it? So this is one approach using wildcards. Now let us go for one more approach. I can write it as first approach. Okay. Now let me go for the second one. That is, it is variables, using variables. So is it something that we are going to pass on the variables dynamically? Yes. So in few scenarios, in some situations, selector will be the same, but as I said, the value of the attribute which is there in the selector will keep on changing. For next time, say for example, let us go for RPA challenge. Here, when we use a selector to select the email field, next time when you refresh this, the position of this email gets changed. See, another first one is the last name. The first field here, it is last name. Earlier it is email, right? So in such scenarios, we can use the same selector, but passing the value to the attribute could be changing. So we can use the same selector passing some variables instead of the clear string value. Okay, let me show you an example. Before that, please make a note of all these things on a high level with keywords so that it will be easy for you to remember and it will be easy for you to refer again whenever it is needed. So using variables, so you can use variables to pass the attribute values in selector tags. Okay, target tags. Can use the same selector to identify different attribute elements by passing variables. So the variable is getting changed. Whenever we pass a different value in the variable, the selector will identify some other different element in UI, right? So this is how we can use variables. Now let me show you an example here. Let us just move on to our studio. So here I have here one selector where the name value is something like 2kGEE, right? So let me copy this out and show you how it is. So it is, let me cancel it. Let me indicate this again on the screen. So for example, I'm going to use this last name. I'm selecting this particular one. So if you see here, let me open this selector, strict selector, yes. Okay, cancel this. Yes, we could use this one. See, it is the ID equals to some value. So it is referring to role in company field. Whereas if I refresh and validate it again, it is not able to identify this element, right? Let me go back to this and I'll be refreshing the page. Okay, now let us go back to our studio and let us use this selector editor and validate this. Okay, so if you see here, it is not able to validate this properly. Why? Because the ID value got changed. Earlier it is something like this, right? 2kGEE ID value, right? So this is how it will work in situations where the fields are getting changed. Okay, now let me show you one more example for clear understanding. Let us use the same app recorder on RPA challenge. Now let us take email field and then phone number field. Okay, 2 to 3 fields just for our understanding. So the selector will be the same in all the field identification, but only one particular or two particular attributes gets changed. Let us see how. See, now I am just going to enter some value for this, some abcd@gmail.com. Now let us go for one more element. Let us identify something. Okay, now let us go for last name and just, okay, let us use another value, first name. Okay, okay, and then I'm going to give some value. Okay, now let us save this and go back to the studio. Okay, now see each and every selector here. What it has something like, the ID value is something like GEEE. Okay, now let me go back and let me just cancel this and let us go to the phone number selector. What is the selector? Okay, it doesn't give. Now let us see the first name selector. Okay, see here, it has something called, okay, now let us go back to UI Explorer, and now since that I don't know what could be the ID value of this particular one, if you see here, ID value is something like this one, right? If you use this one, right? So let us go back to this and just save this. So this way, if you could see, there is an attribute called, a property called ID, whose value is keep on changing. So based on this value, your field is getting identified, right? So when we pass these values dynamically using some variables, we can use the same selector for n number of fields in the particular application. So this is how we can use variables instead of using some wildcard symbols and all, because there is no proper pattern in this where only few characters are getting changed, right? Complete value is getting changed, and we are sure that it is related to a particular attribute value, attribute property, right? So in such scenarios, we can go for variables to pass dynamic values, right? Let us move on to the other approach. Third one, okay, using index values. Using index values, okay. Actually, if there is, I already explained you, right? In the same container, if there are n number of fields, there is a property called attribute called IDX, where it is keep on getting changed. It is recognized based on the number of the position in an array of attributes, right? We can go for UI Explorer, where you can see an attribute called IDX. Let me check if it is having that IDX or not. Let me show you with one example. Okay, let us consider one more example. No changes required. Okay, before that, let me give you a clear highlight keywords for this index values. Index values are the values which an attribute. We can say that index variables are used to access UI elements based on their numerical position in the list, or to access specific UI elements in an array or structure. Okay. So how we are going to use this index value is, first of all, we are supposed to store these all elements or the variables into a into a variable. Okay, so for example, see here, based on the index value of its of the particular element, we are going to identify the element. And right, this is an example. Let us see in detail about this when time comes. So we'll work from the starting. Say for example, we'll work starting with wildcards, then variables for the dynamic selectors and all. Later we'll have a demo on each of these three approaches. Now let us quickly recap what and all we have learned in this video. We have known about the situations where we need to fine-tune the selectors. So, for example, when the selectors are not reliable or too specific and too sensitive towards the application changes, and whenever there is a system change, or whenever the selectors are dynamically changing, and whenever the selectors use IDX, index value. So in these situations, we need to fine-tune the selectors, and there are three best approaches to fine-tune. One among them is using wildcards. So we will be using some asterisk or excuse me, question mark symbols to replace 0 or more characters in a string value while passing the attribute value. So this is one approach, and the other approach is using variables. So this is most important when you are working with dynamic selectors. So instead of passing these values to attributes, we will be passing the values using a dynamic variable, so that the value in the variable might be changing, but using the same selector we can identify different attribute elements in UI. So the other one is using index values. So when we store all these attribute elements into data, when we store this data using the index value of that particular list, we can identify different UI elements, right? So this is how we are going to use fine-tune selectors in UiPath Studio. Let us see in detail having a demo on each of these approaches in our coming videos. So if you like this as informative video, so please give a like and share with your friends and colleagues. Also please do subscribe our channel for more videos. Click the bell icon and select all option, so that all our videos will be notified to you. Meet you through our next videos. Till then, happy learning and happy automating. Bye bye.